Today I'll be talking about the sacred masculine and polarity in a conscious relationship. And what I mean by that is how humanity has evolved from the very industrial age, hunter-gatherer, etc., into this more modern time where we are a little bit disconnected from the essence of humanity and the essence of our planet. Basically, we are still biologically hunter-gatherers living in a modern world, and that completely contradicts our wiring, our makeup, and that mismatch destroys polarity, which is attraction, connection, our sense of meaning, where we used to come from a place of the man would lead, provide, etc. Now, I'm not saying that is not relevant today, it is. However, there are many women who are very successful in business, doing all of those things, buying houses, buying cars, all good. Yet in polarity, what we need is the man to be protecting, providing, even if that is in a shared financial thing. Mostly the man would provide financially, yet in a business sense where, for example, my wife runs her own company, she produces courses that help a lot of people, and we share things. Now that paradigm, that old paradigm served in survival-based societies, but now we're moving into obviously the 5Ds, what many conscious people are focused on and bringing about. And within that, we look at things like women being naturally closer to source, spirit, God, whatever you want to, whichever term or label you wish to use. Now, the feminine becomes the oracle in the relationship, mainly because she is much closer. She gets those messages much more directly. The feminine tends to be more heart-centered than the masculine. The masculine is heart-centered, providing he's done his healing, etc., because these days there are a lot of issues, a lot of trauma, etc., that hasn't been healed. Yet the feminine is able to encompass it all. So that is something we'll go into later. The differences between the masculine mind and the feminine mind, masculine being testosterone dominant, feminine being estrogen dominant, and the makeups that go with that. So masculine is leadership, right? The man protects, is the strength of the family, etc. You can look at it in that sense, where there's a saying in Judaic sayings where the man is the head of the family, but the woman is the neck. So she tells him where to look, what to focus on. And I tend to agree with that, because there were times, obviously I follow my own intuition, I'm quite intuitive for a man, yet my wife has a direct line. She talks to our guides, she talks to high dimensional beings. Now, much of that information that comes through has shaped my life and her life and our life. It's incredible. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for her and that skill set. So masculine leadership equals presence and action. Feminine power, intuition and receptivity. Now this is the evolved polarity of what we'll be exploring today. Now my story, I won't go into it too much. I grew up with a lot of trauma, many interesting happenings in my life have led me to where I am today. A lot of healing, a lot of inner work, a lot of child work, a lot of masculine embodiment, etc. So through all of this, what became clear to me is much of our suffering comes from not understanding our biology, our evolution, our masculine and feminine wiring, and how polarity actually shapes that connection, the attraction, the leadership, the relationship. And today, what I want to take you back to is the beginning, before any of the trauma, conditioning, societal programming, where our story, well, each individual story, in the physical sense, begins. So you think of as above, so below. As within, so without. That's a saying I'm sure you've heard before. On the macro, the micro, if you look at the Fibonacci sequence, it's in everything. So going back to the first instant of our existence on Earth, conception. Now, the first expression of polarity for us, for humans, is a biological level, fundamentally a biological level. Polarity expressing itself in the interaction of the sperm and the egg, so the interaction between them. Masculine principle is movement, direction, and penetration. The feminine principle is stillness, receptivity, and selection. Now, the egg actively signals the sperm. So you can look at this from a metaphysical sense also, where higher selves choose the soul of the child, etc., to come down, and obviously our bodies have very high intelligences. We've got the heart, brain, coherence. There's a whole lot of things that we can go into, but we won't. We'll keep it more focused on the polarity. And the egg signals to the sperm. So obviously it chooses the sperm, the stronger sperm, the most aligned, etc. And progesterone basically acts as a sperm receptor to change the swimming patterns. Now, something called CCL20, that's found in human follicular fluid, is shown to influence sperm behavior and attraction. There are aromatic aldehydes and peptides from the egg that send subtle biochemical gradients to the sperm that the sperm responds to. So the sperm signals it, much like a drop of blood or a few drops of blood in the ocean, and sharks can sense that. However, that pattern works. It's not smell, obviously, but they're attracted to that. So the sperm navigates towards this signal, which includes chemotaxis, thermotaxis, rheotaxis, and of course then hyperactivation, where when the sperm reaches the egg, it wants to get in, so it redlines, so to speak. Now, all four combine to create a directional masculine polarity: movement, orientation, commitment, and penetration. Now, this is very masculine. This is what masculinity is about. Now, the egg selects, which is the feminine choice, biological, spiritual, obviously, physical attraction, all of that has to come into it. This is one of the most important and least known facts. The egg doesn't just accept any sperm. Now, the egg shows a preference based on the chemical compatibility of specific sperm. Now, this is the biological foundation of feminine discernment, feminine selectiveness. Only what resonates may enter. Now, saying that, polarity is the architecture of life itself. So everything that moves, attracts, creates, or transforms because of the opposite in the relationship. It's like electricity. There's a positive and a negative. Up, down, light, dark, left, right. Everything has an opposite. So when we look at conception, we see something important about polarity. The feminine isn't passive in that. The egg isn't just sitting there waiting. She sends out the chemical signals saying this way. And the masculine isn't dominating. He responds to the signal with movement, direction, and action. This shows us something fundamental. Masculine energy is the doing, the moving, the penetrating, and the bringing of action into form. So the idea, there might be a plan. The feminine brings the plan. The man acts on it, moves, makes it happen. Feminine energy is the inspiration and the invitation, the intuitive signal in the field that says this way. The feminine doesn't inspire through control either. She inspires through intuition and energetic response. The masculine acts when his action is aligned, when it's guided by the feminine signal. So, in this type of polarity, the feminine is the oracle and the masculine is the builder of idea into form. Now, what is hunter-gatherer biology? For 99% roughly of human history, we lived as hunter-gatherers. Our bodies, our hormones, our nervous systems are still wired for that. They need food, sleep, air, water, sunlight, connection, all of which is somewhat diluted in today's day and age. So the hunter-gatherer, backed by anthropology, men evolved as hunter and gatherers. So we have long-term focus, long-range focus, single task orientation, pattern detection, spatial awareness, and we are very good at risk-taking, navigating danger and in foreign territories. Now, testosterone supports direction, focus, aggression control, not aggression. So testosterone helps with aggression when you have a regulated nervous system. If you don't have a regulated nervous system, then that's where loose cannons and dangerous men are found. Target fixation, reduced emotional noise. So men look at a target, example, hunting. Let's say you want to take a woolly mammoth or whatever it may have been You have to work together quietly, move together, focus on the target, carry the weapons, use the weapons. You have to be able to get close. Let's say it's a spear. You're going to be risking your life. So you have to shut down that part of your brain that says, this is dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous. If I don't bring this food back, my wife's going to die, my children's going to die, the rest of the tribe are going to die. That's as simple as it gets. Now, women evolved as gatherers, caregivers, and relational organizers. That's why women are a lot more heart-centered, the healed ones. Close-range scanning, which is looking at berries or digging for roots or mushrooms or whatever it may be. Multi-focus awareness, emotional mapping, collaboration, social cohesion. These are very important in a family unit or a tribal unit. Threat detection via relational cues as well. So women are very good at detecting dangerous situations. Their nervous systems are highly tuned to that. So if someone raises their voice or does a threatening motion, their reaction is fight or flight, of course, but awareness of the situation and that this could potentially become a dangerous situation. That's why in marriages and things like that, men that raise their voices or whatever, that becomes a problem because the woman doesn't know if he's just annoyed. Sure, he can raise his voice, but she feels threatened. So this is where that type of thing has to really be looked at carefully. Estrogen supports multitasking, emotional processing, communication, micro-reading expressions, as I just said, reading the room, and relational bonding. Now, in tribal days, the tribe was not an option. You had to live together in unity and harmony, at least somewhat, to survive. Every tribe had hunters, warriors, gatherers, elders, healers, shamans, caretakers, children, mothers, firekeepers, storytellers. Mostly no one survived alone. I'm sure you could, but for the ease of survival and living as a unit, you worked as a tribe. Polarity existed because roles existed, and those roles are what ensured survival. Human physiology and why our modern life disrupts that is because we used to hunt for our food. Now, a lot of us sit. We evolved outdoors in the sunlight, touching bare feet on the earth. Now we have blue lights, which are often on until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, which are essentially telling our body not to produce melatonin and still producing cortisol. So that's making it harder to sleep. We evolved as tribal beings. Cut that. We evolved in tribes being social. Now we're isolated. A lot of people have anxiety or hyper-individualization. We evolved with danger. And now we're overstimulated but under challenge. So we are constantly, a lot of people are in fight or flight simply because the human mind doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. If you're thinking about a situation that stressed you out, if you're driving, etc., your nervous system is active. So if you're thinking about a stressful situation, then your body thinks you're in that situation. So it fires accordingly. It releases stress hormones. And that's why a lot of people have anxiety, depression, and other issues. So we evolved with purpose as well. Many of us had roles, so we knew what our tasks were. We had to build a hut. We had to hunt for food. We had to protect against other tribes or warring factions. And we evolved with the natural circadian rhythm, with the sunlight, sunrise, sunset, etc. And a lot of people now sleep like shit. We evolved with clear gendered contributions, and now a lot of that stuff is blurred. So the body thinks we're still hunter-gatherers, but we're living in an environment that's built for comfort, convenience, basically sedation, and emotional disconnection. So that essentially sets the stage for why these days a lot of men lose their purpose. Women lose their sense of safety. Polarity collapses, attraction dies, and nervous systems burn out. So it's a real issue. Now, one teacher or lady that I've learnt a lot from, done many courses, read many books, is Alison Armstrong. So the foundations of masculine and feminine awareness. And what she says is, men are not hairy women. So there is also a bit of a tip that I will go into later. Now, men commonly operate in single focused attention, which means we focus on one task at a time. Sure, you can multitask sometimes, some people can, some men can, some men can't. But once we lock onto something, that's where our attention narrows. It's like tunnel vision. So we just, bang, we're locked on. Anything else is simply not important. So if your man's doing something and you're talking to him and he's really focused on something, even if it's the TV, because there's reasons for that why men watch TV as well. It's like discharge from the day. Anyhow, if he's focused on something, let's say he's doing something on the computer, really focused on it, and you're talking to him and he doesn't hear you, he's not ignoring you. He's simply that focused on what he's doing. It means he has to hunt for this meat. And if he doesn't bring this meat back, you're going to starve. And he knows that. Your tribe is going to starve. So we filter out everything that's not relevant to that task. It is literally a tunnel vision. So what Alison Armstrong also says is this is a biological advantage and stems from a testosterone-dominant male brain. And why? This is consistent with anthropology. The hunter requires extreme focus, tunnel vision to help track prey, patterns in the landscape, navigate. Testosterone also supports linear problem solving and goal orientation. This is why for men, we can focus very deeply, ignore distractions completely, complete tasks with high efficiency, but we struggle to switch suddenly. So we can switch, but it takes time because we have to reassess and refocus and then move again. So this is a big thing for men. So testosterone in the male brain, it's not a drive hormone in the emotional sense. It's a neural efficiency and action readiness hormone. So its primary role is to optimize the male brain for focused action when required and conservation when not. So that's why some men love to switch off and watch TV, because it's like, for example, when I was in the military, there was always a group of soldiers, 6 or so, in their full uniform, ready to go at any moment. So if you're not going, if you're not sent out on a patrol or a mission or whatever it is, you're resting, because you know that at any moment you're going to need to give your absolutely full energy and focus to what's required of you. So in that, the attention narrows and you get focused on the target. Testosterone increases selective attention. It also supports task-relevant signal amplification, reduces sensitivity to irrelevant stimuli, which something could be in the way, not important. Ignoring that, I'm focused on this. And what it looks like in men, again, is the tunnel focus and our ability to stay with one thing for a long period of time. So that's why we can do something, and even if we're tired, worn out, etc., we can still keep going on one thing because that's our goal, that's our focus. So aggression modulation, it's not aggression creation, by the way. Testosterone does not automatically cause aggression. So what it does is enhances dominance regulation, supports assertive action when status, territory, or purpose is challenged or invited, and works in tandem with cortisol and serotonin. So high testosterone plus good regulation equals a calm authority. Now, high testosterone with poor regulation equals reactivity. That is where a lot of problems start for men, which is a whole separate issue. So testosterone could be better described as the amplifier of assertive response capacity, not just an aggressive. So goal orientation as well supports linear sequencing, start, execute, finish, reduces emotional interference during the execution. So that's why, again, I'm saying that men often fix problems rather than process feelings mid-task. So, for example, there was a time in my life where I had anxiety, there was a situation, I was at work and I knew that I had to do my job and I was riddled with anxiety. That was really messed up. But I ignored it because I was focused on my job. Obviously, I had to bring money in, and that was what I focused on. Forget about the anxiety, forget about all of that, deal with it later. Discipline, effort tolerance, delay of gratification. So I don't need to feel good about this, I just need to get it done. Persistence under load, and execution despite your emotional state or his emotional state. Now that discipline, neurologically, that is discipline, basically. And men can act without feeling inspired because testosterone decouples emotion from execution. So we also lose a bit of risk evaluation. It's calculated risk, not reckless risk, mostly. And testosterone also alters how the brain weighs reward versus threat, assesses probability under pressure, and responds to uncertainty. So we're not blind to danger, we're just much less affected by it. Now, this allows for a higher risk tolerance. Decisions made faster under incomplete data, confidence in movement where others freeze. For example, my wife, when we first started dating, I would scare her because for some reason I thought it was funny, but that's just my dark sense of humor. And she collapsed once, and I was just like, what the fuck? And some people do that. They just don't have that fight in them. They collapse or freeze. So we also have spatial processing, which means tracking at high speeds or distance. So that's why men can drive very fast and probably scare a lot of women as they pass them quickly or with their speedy driving. Testosterone also enhances dorsal vision, stream activity, where motion tracking, depth perception, predictive spatial modeling. So we can really tell if that car's going to fit or not, even if we're moving fast. It's just all part of the hunter. And participating movement rather than reacting to it. So we can see if something's moving towards us, and a lot of women, if they see something moving towards them, they'll slow down and be very cautious and then ready to move. But we don't, because we track it and we can assess quickly how close it's going to come to us. Women often perceive movement in a relational context first. Men perceive the trajectory and then the space. So energy conservation until... Okay. So energy conservation until action is required. This is another thing that Alison Armstrong brings up with some very accurate insights. Testosterone is supporting a baseline energy conservation. And it may look as though a man is lazy when he's resting or doing something, but that is just a biological program where, okay, I don't need to do anything now, I'm going to relax and rest. So he needs to rest because that's what his body's calling for. That's what the system is calling for. So low arousal when no task is present, rapid mobilization when needed. So when a man appears to be quiet or doing nothing, it's just standby mode, basically. It's not collapse. And that allows for an explosive capacity or longer endurance, sustained output when it's required. So you could say it's like a single purpose organism, which really means we can only do one thing at once. So what it really means is that men can effectively do one thing very efficiently. So when he has to switch, the efficient capacity is reduced. So being able to focus on one thing, focus on it, plan it, execute, complete, is much more efficient than switching from one thing to another. Now, testosterone biases the brain towards one primary objective at a time, which, as I just said, it carries a higher neurological cost when we have to switch. So in practice, men also bond through shared action. So like hunting would have been a thing, or going to war, etc. And men feel regulated when their purpose is clear. So they know what they have to do. They feel good. Okay, I'm going to do this. Let's get it done. Great. Men become dysregulated when pulled in multiple directions simultaneously. The female brain and estrogen. Now, females have diffused awareness. The female brain and estrogen. Now, women have diffused awareness, relational intelligence, environmental integration, where testosterone optimizes for focused action. Estrogen optimizes for awareness, connection, and pattern recognition. So basically, it's like a high resolution perception or connectivity to source also and to each other. So according to Alison Armstrong, estrogen supports empathy, emotional memory, relational awareness, verbal communication, multitasking, intuition via pattern recognition, That's a very important one to hold on to. Estrogen increases the brain's ability to connect the dots very quickly in settings, interpret social cues, perceive threats in relationships, integrate feelings into decision making, and she frames that as a feminine superpower. So diffuse awareness is basically wide angle attention. So they can look at the room and take it all in at once, where a man may be focused on one thing, two things, three things. He can take in the whole room, but he's assessing for singular threats. Basically, that's how a man's brain works. It's like if you ever sit in a restaurant, I, for example, is something my wife knows now, that I like to sit with my back to a wall or a safe corner so that I can assess where threats may come from. Now, some people may think that's unnecessary. I don't, especially given today's situations with many places that you go to visit, wherein a woman is taking in the whole room looking for other cues. So more interconnectedness. So diffuse awareness is basically the feminine trait, and especially between the amygdala, the emotional priority, hippocampus, which is for memory, prefrontal cortex, which is decision-making, regulation, etc. Now, estrogen increases connectivity between the brain regions. So for women, the connectedness between the lobes, I think it's something like 40% more capacity than the male brain for all of this to happen. It's not saying women are smarter, but you can definitely process a lot more. Women have diffuse awareness, meaning their attention spreads across multiple things. They notice details, micro-expressions, tone shifts. They track emotional environment. They multitask naturally and are constantly scanning the field. And this comes from the gathering roles for managing the social fabric, keeping the tribe cohesive, relational intelligence. In Alison's words, women are wired to notice everything. So what this creates is a broad attentional spread, simultaneous tracking of people, environment, tone, subtle changes, fewer filters on incoming data, where men tend to filter out a lot of stuff. Women are taking in the whole field at once. So what is microperception and social signal detection? Estrogen enhances sensitivity to, as I mentioned before, facial microexpressions, voice tone shifts, body language changes, emotional incongruence. These are all keys that a woman puts together to be able to give her the knowing when something is off. They can sense relational tension early and pick up on unspoken dynamics. So neurologically, this is a high bandwidth social perception. Estrogen also strengthens emotional tagging of memories. That's why women can recall things from years ago, on what day and time and what you were wearing, because it's emotionally stored. Contextual recall, relational history storage. This means events are remembered with who felt what. Emotional community matters to women. Past interactions, and they can inform present safety. This can be known as relational pattern memory. So estrogen also supports language centers, cross-hemisphere communication, and nuanced expression. The result of that is faster word access, greater emotional vocabulary, and story-stored meaning making, so emotional memory. Women often talk to think because language is part of their cognitive processing, and it's not just an expression. Multi-focus and parallel processing, unlike testosterone's single-task optimization, estrogen supports parallel processing, and this evolved from gathering, child supervision, environmental scanning, and social coordination. So estrogen doesn't override logic. It adds relational consequences into the equation. Decisions often including things like how this is going to affect people, long-term relational safety, emotional impact on the group as a whole, and this is adaptive intelligence for tribal cohesion, child survivability, social stability. That's the crux of it. Now, communication. Why men and women often misunderstand each other. So most polarity breaks down simply because we misunderstand how each other's systems are actually working. If we don't understand each other's operating systems, we consistently misinterpret each other's behavior and we end up hurting each other without meaning to. So men think women are overacting, but they're running a nervous system that's built for relational safety and emotional skill. Women think men don't care, but they're running a focus system built for direction, problem solving, and conserving energy. Men think women talk too much, but talking is a feminine regulation system. Women think men don't open up, but masculine processing is internal, not verbal. We don't need to talk the way women do to process stuff. Often the opposite. Men try to fix her, but she just wants to be heard and contained. Women try to help him, but it pressures his nervous system and collapses testosterone because he needs time to think and process things. He doesn't need the talking and rushing. Now, none of this is personal. It's all biological, hormonal, evolutionary, and energetic. Men often filter aggressively, so they lock on to a task, ignore everything else, and can miss the subtle cues. Women keep the background online, so to speak, track emotional shifts, notice what is unsaid, and process holistically. These are complementary survival strategies. So the Berry report, according to Alison Armstrong, is something that the women had to do because they notice everything, and in gathering you must see everything: colors, shapes, textures, changes, movement, emotional tones, safety, children, and food all at once. They also have to be very descriptive. They have to say this bush over by the river to the west of that large rock at this time of the year, this color flower will then turn into that color berry, and if it's not red, if it's green, it can kill you. If it's red, it will help heal whatever, or you can eat it. So it has to be very specific, very detailed. And men are not so much. We tell a story, we often skip over certain facts, we get to the point. We may even exaggerate about something. I don't know, this was 5 kilometers, let's say it was 6 or 7, because he's not really thinking about the detail, he's thinking about the objective. So, some tips for men. If she comes to you with a problem, or she comes to you and starts talking, ask if she wants to just be heard or if she wants you to help her fix a problem. So when a woman is full of emotions, tension, thoughts, or overwhelm, it's like she's carrying a bag full of rubbish and it's ready to overflow. So she doesn't want you to fix it. She doesn't want advice. She doesn't need a solution. She doesn't want you to judge what's in the bag. She just needs to unload that bag and empty it. So your job, simply hold the bag, let her dump it all, give her a hug, give her a kiss, hear her. Make sure you're listening to her. Make sure you're hearing it. But you don't need to take it on. Let her just bang, let it all out. She's going to feel so much better. Now, a tip for women. With men, check for capacity first, because obviously men have a different system. We might be in rest mode, so we're not ready to switch on and focus and listen well. So check for capacity. And we need to switch and focus before we can listen well. If the answer is not right now, then don't take it as rejection, because he is honestly honoring you and saying, not right now, give me, I don't know, I'll go take a shower, I'm going to go for a quick jog, do some push-ups or whatever it is. Then ask one clear question. If it's a problem that needs solving. If it's just dumping, also ask for that, but that usually doesn't take as much brain power. Then ask one question and then stop. Don't stack the questions. Don't keep altering the question. Don't give different options to the question. Don't answer the question for him. We often go quiet to think. Now, we're not confused. We do think. And we need time to process, to think about the options, to come up with a solution, and then we will come back to you with an honest reply. So one thing I see so often is, and it's no one's fault, women will talk to men like they will talk to another woman. And if the man hasn't finished what he's saying, he hasn't said what he wants to say, and you're not going to get the whole conversation, because he's going to switch off. He's like, oh, she's not listening. Because I've had that happen many times. I sort of take time, I process, I think, and then come back with a genuine, honest answer. And if someone's moved on by that time, by the time it comes out, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm not going to bother with this. So that's me. I can give you demonstrations, which I think I will. I'll give you, no. So that was a little bit of feminine masculine polarity and some tips on how to maximize your relationship. I'm Daryl Kroll. Thank you for listening.